Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to put on our hard hats and act as architects. But we aren't designing a physical building here, we are designing a learning environment. And specifically, we want to know what design principles we should actually employ to create a space that supports constructivist learning. So whether you're a teacher, a corporate trainer, or a community leader, if you want to create spaces where students don't just memorize facts, but actually build deep, lasting understanding, you need a very specific blueprint.
All right, let's map out the structural components we're going to build today. We'll start with redesigning how we learn, move into authentic problems, dive deep into the social negotiation of meaning, talk about cultivating psychological safety, and finally wrap up with the teacher as a facilitator.
First up, Part 1, redesigning how we learn. Now, you know the old saying, you can't put a new roof on a crumbling foundation. So before we build anything, we absolutely have to check our foundation. Notice the really sharp contrast here. We're talking about the difference between simply pouring information into a student's head versus actually empowering them to build their own understanding. For the longest time, the objectivist model just assumed knowledge could be neatly packaged and handed from a teacher to a completely passive student. But the constructivist model, it assumes something radically different. It says knowledge cannot simply be transmitted. It literally has to be actively generated and constructed by the learner based on their own experiences. We're making a massive shift from reproductive learning, just repeating what you were told, to generative learning.
This idea brilliantly illustrates that learning isn't just about absorbing facts. It's an active, structural search for meaning. Think about it. When students enter a room, they don't just leave their prior life experiences at the door, right? They bring their own unique mental frameworks with them, and they use those exact frameworks to interpret new information. To build a successful constructivist environment, we really have to honor and utilize that inherent, deeply human desire to make sense of the world.
Moving right along to Section 2, the anchor, authentic problems.
Okay, so if you're going to ask students to construct knowledge, they need some high-quality building materials to work with. The absolutely crucial point here is that students must take ownership of a complex problem to truly generate new knowledge. In a traditional classroom, a teacher teaches a concept and then hands out a perfectly neat, simplified problem just to practice it. Well, constructivism flips that entirely on its head. The problem comes first. The problem is the actual vehicle that drives the learning. It's the messy, ill-structured problem that forces the student to go out, seek information, and build brand new cognitive structures to solve it.
While the academic literature on this can get pretty dense, the core design principle is super straightforward. Design authentic tasks that match the cognitive demands of the real world. Instead of oversimplifying tasks so that everyone gets the right answer on the first try, which, let's be honest, doesn't happen to anyone, we must design cognitive challenges that reflect the natural complexity of the actual environment students will eventually function in. If we're preparing students for the real world, the tasks they do in our learning environment must actually feel like the real world.
So if you want to employ specific design principles to make this happen, you start right here. Provide multiple representations of reality. Because real life isn't just a single textbook chapter, is it? It's a multifaceted challenge. By avoiding oversimplification and using highly meaningful real-world contexts, you shift the entire focus away from abstract instruction. Giving students authentic, complex tasks gives them a real reason to care, a reason to engage, and a genuine context to anchor all that new knowledge they're building.
Let's move to Section 3, and this is a big one, the social negotiation of meaning.
With our foundation set and our anchor locked in place, we get to design the commons, the shared spaces. This is the absolute heart of a social constructivist environment. If you want a space where students really have a chance to negotiate meaning, you have to remember Lev Vygotsky's theory. Just think about the last time you truly learned something new and incredibly complex. Did you just sit and read about it in a dark room all by yourself, or did you grapple with it alongside others in a community? Vygotsky theorized that our highest cognitive functions actually originate through social interactions. We bounce ideas off each other, we debate, we share, and through that messy, super interactive process, we mutually construct a shared understanding.
This means that knowledge isn't just some individual possession you lock away. It's a shared experience shaped by our interactions with peers and mentors. You simply cannot separate what is learned from how and where it is learned. If we want students to deeply, truly understand a concept, we have to deliberately create a social milieu where that concept can be discussed, challenged, and refined in real time. A massive design principle here is allowing for and honestly deliberately encouraging what we call socio-cognitive conflict. I literally love that term. It means that when a peer presents an idea that completely conflicts with a student's current understanding, it creates this mental friction. And to resolve that friction, the student actually has to construct a higher, way more sophisticated level of reasoning. By exposing students to peer tutoring, collaborative problem solving, and debating, that conflict isn't a bad thing at all. It's the exact mechanism that drives intellectual growth.
But wait, there is a catch. Section 4. Cultivating Psychological Safety.
Here's the thing. You absolutely cannot have social negotiation, debate, or socio-cognitive conflict if your students are terrified to speak up. Which brings us to installing our safety nets. Psychological safety is the absolute enabling condition for learning. If a student expects ridicule, embarrassment, or a loss of social status just for asking a question or sharing a half-formed idea, they're just going to remain silent. They'll completely hide their confusion. A truly effective constructivist environment combines high challenge, like those complex, authentic problems we talked about, with exceptionally high support, ensuring every single learner feels secure enough to make their thinking visible to the group.
Now, this isn't just some new educational fad. It might actually surprise you to learn that this concept originated decades ago in clinical and organizational research, way before it became a cornerstone of collaborative classroom design. From Kurt Lewin's early studies on democratic group climates back in the 1930s to Edgar Schein and Warren Bennis officially coining the term in 1965, all the way to Amy Edmondson's modern definition of interpersonal risk-taking, the research is crystal clear. Human beings simply do not innovate, share, or learn optimally when they feel threatened.
Just look at this behavioral shift side by side. It's wild. When you finally remove that fear of failure, students shift away from hiding their confusion to actively asking questions and making their thinking visible. They stop copying others or looking for the easy way out, and they start persisting with really difficult tasks. If we genuinely want that robust social negotiation of meaning that we designed earlier, we absolutely must have a space where students can disagree respectfully and revise their ideas publicly without an ounce of shame.
Which brings us to our final component, Section 5, the teacher as facilitator.
So, we must define the role of the architect in this space. If the students are the ones doing all the heavy lifting of building the knowledge, what exactly does the teacher do? Well, in this new model, teachers step off the stage and relinquish some of their absolute power. You transition from being the sage on the stage, the singular source of all truth, to the guide on the side. Now, this doesn't mean you do less work. Actually, scratch that. It almost always requires way more skill. You are constantly facilitating learning, promoting inquiry, and closely monitoring student exploration to ensure they're staying on the path to true conceptual understanding.
This is all about working within what Vygotsky called a student's zone of proximal development. That magical sweet spot between what they can do completely alone and what they can do with just a little help. The teacher provides just enough support to help the learner succeed. First, you model, not just the performance, but the actual cognitive processes behind it. Then you coach them by motivating, monitoring, and provoking really deep reflection. And finally, you scaffold the environment, carefully adjusting the difficulty of the task so it's challenging but totally achievable, eventually fading that support away entirely as the student achieves independent competence.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to evaluate your own teaching, training, or learning environments. Just ask yourself, who is really doing the cognitive heavy lifting in your space right now? Are you just passively transmitting facts, or are you deliberately applying these design principles to empower a true collaborative community of meaning makers? The blueprint is entirely in your hands. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, keep building.